Welcome back to a new episode of Podcast on the Brink, Wednesday afternoon, May 22nd. Very excited to be joined this week by Damon Bruce, a longtime radio voice in the Bay Area, host of the Damon Bruce Show. You can find his work on the YouTube channel. It's Damon Bruce Plus. Most importantly, though, he's a 1997 graduate of Indiana University, and he joins us this week to talk the rookie season of Trayce Jackson-Davis, who we just got a chance to watch up close with the Golden State Warriors. Welcome to the show, Damon. Good to talk to you today.
Alex, thank you so much for having me. I tell you, the night that I found Trayce Jackson-Davis just dropping in the draft, I thought to myself, man, the Warriors got an opportunity here to add a player that the rest of the league is absolutely overlooking due to the absence of an outside shot. And if all you want to do is evaluate a player like Trayce Jackson-Davis just through the premise of a corner three, are you missing out? And sure enough, the Warriors take him with a second to last pick of the second round, and it has been smooth sailing since for this team with Trayce Jackson-Davis, who I think is on the NBA all-rookie second team. Had Steve Kerr decided earlier in the year to start trusting Trayce Jackson-Davis. Steve is reluctant, Alex, to trust young players. And I think part of his reluctance to trust Trayce Jackson-Davis kept Trayce off that second team, and it might have kept the Warriors out of the playoffs, if you want to be completely honest about it. Trayce had a spectacular rookie season, as did Brandon Pajemski, who did get honored with first team all-rookie. So, a team that feels like they're a little bit stuck right now has two very significant rookies to build around, and who knows? Things could get interesting one more time before the championship window of the Steph Curry era officially comes to an end.
You mentioned the draft night slide down to 57. How much of that was coordinated with Trayce's agent and talking to the Warriors ahead of time in terms of a potential deal there, and how much of that was legitimate teams passing on him? Because it seemed like after the fact that the Warriors did really want him, and maybe there was some reluctance from other teams to maybe take him, knowing that maybe his preference was to go to Golden State.
When you're in the second round, there's no room for beggars to be choosers, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't think you get to whip it out and show it to anybody and tell how you wanted to get, you want to enter the NBA. You're in the second round. Like you're just lucky to hear your name at this point. Is I think the way he must have felt about the whole thing. He couldn't believe it. I don't know if he's ever going to go publicly, but privately, he's told, he's sitting there on draft night and he can't believe watching it, and nor should he have. In the history of Indiana basketball, this is not like you're graduating from, UC Santa Cruz. When you are the all-time blocks, all-time rebounds, third in scoring at Indiana, look, there's not a single player who is anywhere in those categories who didn't even at least have some sort of an impactful professional career. It was just amazing that everybody in the NBA looked at Trayce, evaluated him, watched him never have a season of regression through his entire progress, through coaching changes, through bad teams. He always got better. He's so fundamentally sound. From a footwork standpoint alone, he should have been a first-round draft pick. And I think the entire league understands that it made a massive error letting this guy slip to the Golden State Warriors. And then again, it takes a while to earn Steve Kerr's trust, and we saw it happen. And I just think that Trayce Jackson-Davis can give an element of above-the-rim scoring, at-the-rim protection that Kevon Looney really can't give them regularly anymore. And I will be stunned, Alex, if on opening night of the 24-25 season, Trayce Jackson-Davis isn't the Golden State Warriors starting center.
So let's talk about the progression of Trayce over the course of his rookie season. As you mentioned, it wasn't necessarily a smooth start in terms of getting into the rotation. I think there were even some trips down to the G League for some games, and I don't think anyone really knew what to expect in terms of minutes. Why is that Steve Kerr maybe didn't trust a guy that was so productive in college for 4 years, arguably the second best player in college basketball his senior season, in the record books, Indiana University's, one of the leading scorers, one of the leading rebounders, a 4-year. Right. We're not talking about Jonathan Kuminga. We're not talking about James Wiseman. We're talking about a guy who's extremely polished. And it as you mentioned, he's probably not on that second all rookie team because of the lack of minutes early in the season. So I'm just curious from your perspective, why it took so long for the Warriors to trust him.
I had the opportunity to do a weekly interview with Steve Kerr over the course of 5-6 seasons. And I like Steve Kerr. I think maybe more than anyone else I've ever covered. He is a man of true principle, and he's just fantastic. He knows the parking lot attendant's name and maybe the parking lot attendant's wife's name, or to ask about the kids. He is as personally like a wonderful guy as you'll ever meet. But Steve, when it comes to his basketball team, is a stubborn cuss. He really is. And he distrusts rookies implicitly. I mean, he's got a guy in Moses Moody who I think could absolutely replace Klay Thompson as this team's starting two guard. And Moses Moody has trouble getting into the rotation. I think Steve's been snake bit by a couple rookies early, and he's just failed to trust anyone. Podziemski earned a lot of Steve Kerr trust. I think it's also, big men take time to develop in the NBA. It's not just like plug and play like some guard play or wing play can be. You got to have a real man's body, and you got to go and bang with some adults. And I just think Steve didn't realize how much of an adult he had with Trayce Jackson-Davis. And then when he sees some production early, it's in Steve's nature to doubt it more than just embrace it. And, this is the new, and Steve is also loyal. And he's Kevon Looney is Steve Kerr's pet project since becoming head coach of the Golden State Warriors. And Kevon Looney is probably not in the NBA. Had he been anywhere else, the team would have given up on him. Steve never gave up on him, and he was rewarded with championships and some great, like Wilt Chamberlain level playoff rebounding production from Kevon when he needed it the most. So there was a distrust of rookies, a loyalty to his established vet that just makes Steve stubborn. And you got to earn your way into the Warriors rotation. The Warriors do have a unique style, which I'm sure, Trayce needed to pick up on. And it didn't take him long, though, because, again, the fundamentally sound spacing. I kept on saying, as I was illuminating why I was so excited about Trayce, even though he wasn't playing very much, I would tell my audience, look, when he gets out there, look at how often he's in the right place on the floor. Just look at how often he's in the right spot to contest the shot. He doesn't have to come across the lane to meet his defender at the rim. He was at the rim to begin with. This is know-how. This is experience. Unlike the recent rookie failures that have come through the Golden State Warriors, nobody had as many basketball miles on them. I mean, rare. Alex, it's rare that any rookie has the amount of basketball miles on their odometer that Trayce stepped into the league with, which is another reason why I thought that in a league that has watched so many kids fail, it's time to draft a man. Not someone who needs to grow into their body and figure all things out because they're still 19, 20 years old. Trayce Jackson-Davis is a man who buys cases of beer, like that. This is somebody whose daddy played in the NBA. And that is another reason why I think that once Steve started to trust him, he embraced it. Because Steve has done very well with legacy players. Steph Curry's dad played in the NBA. Klay Thompson's dad played in the NBA. Gary Payton II, we all know who his daddy is. The Warriors have had success with legacy players. And I just think that Trayce Jackson-Davis, again, went in there and just did all the fundamentally sound things the right way and should have been given more of a leash than Steve even gave him earlier on, even later on in the year. I mean, Trayce Jackson-Davis should be playing 35 minutes a night. He should be. He's ready to do it. And I think he will be asked to do that in the upcoming season.
Was there and I know it's hard to pinpoint a moment in an 82 game season because there's so many things that happen, but is there a time period that you can recall from last season where you watched Trayce or you watched the team and you started to pick
When
out
you mean,
where Kerr was starting to trust him? And I know there was a period there when Draymond was out, and it seemed like that kind of corresponded with him getting some minutes and getting more of an opportunity. So I'm just curious, kind of from your perspective, when did maybe the light start to come on both for Trayce and for Kerr trusting him?
I think when he's meeting Giannis at the rim like 3 times in about 11 minutes of court time that night or whatever it was. I mean, he is out there just denying Giannis, who is as big of a train rolling downhill threat as you're going to find in open court basketball. And for Trayce to come out that one night and just play spectacular basketball against Giannis, I think that was maybe the watershed moment. If we had to just circle one moment where you can't deny that. Like, we all know who Giannis is. You're trying to figure out who Trayce is. Well, Trayce just played Giannis at the rim like his name was Dikembe Mutombo. So can we start operating from there? And I think that was a big moment in terms of earning that trust.
In terms of just being around the Warriors, and I know there's a ton of media attention. I know it, every time you turn on SportsCenter, every time you turn on Inside the NBA, even if the Warriors are one of the play-in teams or they're just outside of the playoffs, they're talked about. Obviously, there was a lot going on with Draymond Green, but every time I watch Trayce talk to the media or, interact with, sideline reporters, he never seemed to be swept up or caught up in the moment at all. It was almost like he had been prepared for this moment. And I'm sure playing in the fishbowl that is Indiana basketball had a lot to do with that. But just from a personality standpoint, he seemed uncommon from a rookie just in terms of how he handled adversity of the season and just kind of fitting in and being one of the guys. Would you agree with that? And what, just from your dealings with him, talking to him, what kind of makes him unique in that way?
Alex is unflappable. And when you think about it, who actually lives under a greater microscope? Anyone in the NBA or the centerpiece of Hoosiers basketball? For 4 years, he was the most important athlete in the state of Indiana. For 4 years, as much scrutiny, microscopic, granular evaluation of progress, what he does well, what he doesn't does well. I mean, to play in Indiana, you are in a suffocating situation that is normally only given to like NBA All-Stars, right? I mean, you have the weight of the world on you in every minute you are involved in the program. And that is an unbelievable training ground for anyone to come from and get to the NBA. We all know how insane the scrutiny around Indiana basketball can get. And for him to have survived all of that without a single public outburst or screw you or, hey, wait a minute, I'm playing for how many different coaches here? None of this was easy. Nothing. Trayce never did anything but act like he was a 5th-year senior from his freshman year to his senior year. And he brings that day one to the NBA. And look, there's not a single Indiana graduate that has ever reached out to me who has come to San Francisco that I didn't try to get together with for lunch or a coffee or just to, give them the lay of the land. And I offered that I said, Trayce, this is a little weird. You're not the normal, Indiana graduate moving to San Francisco. How can I help? You have an incredible support system around you with the Golden State Warriors. But here's my number. If you ever need anything from where should I go to blank to what's the best cheeseburger in town? Where can I find the best burrito? Like, I'm your guy. Whatever you need, let me know, and we'll have you over for dinner because everyone needs a home cooked meal. And he and I started a relationship that has gone back and forth on text, that has gone throughout an entire year here. And I'm just telling you, you can see self-confidence in a league that has so many guys projecting self-confidence, but they really don't have it. Trayce's self-confidence hits you in the head like a hammer. He's got it. He's battle-tested. He's been tested by media scrutiny, by fan outrage. So stepping into the NBA was just more of a normal day. I mean, like the first day in the NBA can really overwhelm a rookie. For Trayce Jackson-Davis, his first day in the NBA is what we called Wednesday in Bloomington. So
it was probably a relief for him to get out of being the guy that was consistently under scrutiny, right? He's just
totally
one of the guys with the Warriors.
Yeah, totally. It's he was the engine of all things Indiana. Here he gets to be the dining car, the caboose. This is all Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Like they're the ones who get the real spotlight. And he absolutely flourished in the situation that he was put in. And he did it because men stick out in this league. And I think Trayce is an early candidate for, he's not a young man. He's a man already. And very rarely do you pick up draft picks in the NBA that are men on day one. He was a man on day one.
How does he complement guys like Curry and Thompson and Green in terms of his style of play? I mean, obviously he went from being kind of the focal point at Indiana, but now he's kind of blending in, at least offensively, obviously being a lob threat and things like that, setting screens, being in the right position. Yeah. But it did seem like as the season moved along, he did become a little bit more assertive and more aggressive offensively. I'm just kind of curious, like moving forward with the roster, and obviously there's a lot of things to figure out this offseason for the Warriors and what happens moving forward. I'm just kind of curious how he fits with those pieces long term and how he fit in this season.
Find me the Golden State Warrior who's outstanding around the rim. I'll wait. Like, tell me who that is when you find him, because it's only one guy, and it's Trayce Jackson-Davis. He is a phenomenal lob threat. He is great in the pick and roll. He is fantastic help side defense. He's a very good offensive rebounder. Again, just knowing where your body needs to be on the floor according to how that shot is going up. It's just instincts. He brings instincts to the table that are easily adapted into the Warriors offense, because it's not easy for guys to just come in and flourish. And I think he really did. And you're right, Alex. He got more aggressive as he felt more comfortable. I'm going to go ahead, back this guy down, try to finish around the rim here. We've always known that he's been great. He's got that nice little push shot from about 6 feet and in. He knows who he is. He doubles down on what works, and he doesn't even try the stuff that might not work as well. And that, I think, again, it's a sign of maturity. Double down on what you're good on, eliminate what you're bad at, and find success that way. You got way too many guys who know, I'm not a jump shooter, but I got a jump shot right here in front of me, so I'm going to take it. Trayce puts the ball on the floor and tries to get to the rim. He is not settling for the easy shot that the defense is designed to give you. He is trying to get to where he knows he can operate the most efficiently from. And he was one of the most efficient players in the Warriors season. He really was. He was excellent around the rim. And again, when you're a Warrior who's excellent around the rim, you stand out like a sore thumb, which is another one of the reasons why Kerr, eventually decided I got to leave him out there.
I was guilty of this. I think a lot of people that kind of evaluated him as a prospect, you mentioned the lack of a jump shot. It's not that maybe he doesn't have a jump shot. It's just he doesn't emphasize that part of his game. We never really saw it at Indiana because he didn't have to do it. That wasn't what was asked of him, and it's not being asked of him now in the NBA. Can he still carve out a 10 to 12 year NBA career without ever developing that and just continuing to play the way he's playing right now?
I think especially as we're watching the league sort of evolve into a little bit more of a front court game. We've been pulled out to the 3-point line in a way that it's become annoying almost, and the league has corrected itself. Look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, how they're battling down low right now. That is, I think, what a lot of the league is trending to, some honest to goodness, low post banging around play. And that's what Trayce can do. I mean, does the league need another 6'9" guy shooting a three? I mean, there are enough of those guys. And again, do the Warriors need another guy shooting the three? No, they don't. I remember a lot of people saying, well, you can't have a guy like Draymond Green and Klay and Trayce playing together because you got two non-shooters on the floor. Again, non-shooter should never be interpreted as non-scorer. And Trayce knows how to score. He does. He knows how to finish, and he can finish with either hand. And I again, it worked and it fit because he wasn't going to try to do things that were going to get him in trouble. He's just going to double down on what he's great at. And it paid off for the Warriors, not to the tune of them, advancing in the playoffs the way that they wanted to. But when we go back and look at the tape of why the Warriors weren't, Trayce is not anywhere around the reasons why the Warriors weren't. As a matter of fact, I think he's the number one reason as to what they might have been had they found an earlier trust in Klay Thompson. And that's on them. That's on them. Maybe Draymond's, once again, therapeutic necessity suspension, which is just ridiculous, but it had to happen. I think that retarded the entire team's ability to come together early because, look, Draymond can take an awful lot off the table just by being Draymond up to his no good tricks and being overly violent on the court and getting suspended. When Draymond's out there on his best behavior, he is still a force of nature, and the Warriors are something entirely different. And he helps facilitate more offense than anyone wants to give him credit towards. He is very good at being like a point forward. He'll even bring the ball up. He's not much of a shooter. He's never going to be a scorer. And I do think that he just understands the angles. And Trayce understands the angles. And some of the best passes of the Warriors' year were Draymond feeding Trayce some just little drop passes right in his bucket and easy too. So I think that a lot of people feared that they wouldn't play well together. They did play well together, and they would have played even better together had Draymond not pissed away a third of the year getting suspended.
What are the biggest areas, I guess, of growth that he needs to take this offseason to come back next season even better? Is it just getting stronger? Is it just fine-tuning things? I mean, is there anything specific he needs to do better next year? I mean, he shot over 70% from the field. I don't know how you can do much better than that. I think it was the highest in a season ever for an IU player in the NBA. I don't know how. I mean, that's a pretty impressive number. So I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, what if anything he needs to improve on this offseason?
Again, strength, conditioning, never a problem really for him, but getting stronger at all times is how you're going to want to go about any professional career in any sport, right? So getting stronger, continuing to understand the speed of the game and being able to play at the pace of the NBA night in, night out. This is what he needs to do. And he can shoot just a little, can he? He can. A corner three. That's it. If you're really asking, what's the one thing that he could really add that would help just open, pacing, spacing the floor? Nothing above the break. I'm not asking him to shoot a three from the elbow, not never. Put a corner three in your arsenal. If you can hit a corner three at 35%, all of a sudden you've become more dangerous and more effective in this Warrior offense. So that's what I would do. Just corner threes. Shoot 1,000 a day between now and opening night of the next season. And I bet you he's doing it. I bet you that's the ask they asked of him too. We don't need you shooting, elbow jumpers. We don't need you shooting jumpers from the free throw line. We don't need you to be money from 9 feet out like Nikola Jokic or anything like that with the jump shot. But get to that corner, hit threes with regularity. That will just make everything easier.
Last thing, and it's a bit of a loaded question, so we can't go too long on it, but obviously the strength of the NBA right now is mostly focused in the Western Conference. Boston's a great team in the East, but you look at kind of the road that they could potentially have to the finals. Some people are calling it maybe one of the easier roads ever for a team to get to the finals. The Western Conference is completely different, and you have so many great teams. The defending champs were just knocked off. You've got the Lakers are obviously still going to try to win games. Minnesota has emerged as a power in the West. You've got Dallas. I mean, there's just so many teams, Sacramento down the list. And a lot of people kind of wonder, has the window for the Warriors closed? I'm curious, in your opinion, what are the decisions that need to be made this offseason for the Warriors, and where are they in terms of championship window contention moving forward?
They're certainly at the end of it. I'm not saying their window is thoroughly closed, but boy, this postseason in the NBA has just been a masterclass in youth being served. And the Warriors don't have much youth to serve beyond Brandon Pajemski and Trayce Jackson-Davis, but that's not really true either, because there is Jonathan Kuminga and there is Moses Moody. And I just think that the Warriors need to embrace some of these younger guys and give them more run. And as I said, Steve can get very stubborn. I think he stubborned himself into way too many minutes of Klay Thompson this year. If Klay wants to move on, I would let him move on. I would give Moses Moody the official audition to be a two-way two guard and let him kind of dictate the backcourt with Steph Curry now. They're going to have a mid-level and maybe a veterans mid-level, but they were the most expensive team in the NBA last year. You know, they have spent an awful lot of money and didn't get a lot for it. They are sort of tied to a couple of tough contracts. I mean, you know, you could get the Chris Paul deal as an expiring deal off your book. Well, who's going to give you an awful lot for Chris Paul? I wouldn't want the two best reset the roster players on this team are the two guys that I don't think they can trade. Jonathan Kuminga needs to stick around. We got to see what he becomes, not as a trade chip, but as an actual Golden State Warrior. And then there's the unthinkable. That is, you know, you could trade Steph Curry here at the end and really reload, but that just can't happen because you got to go out and sell tickets. And Steph Curry is in the Joe Montana, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds portion of his career here. He is a god walking among Bay Area sports history right now. So they can't do that. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Warriors to really, truly compete for another NBA title. What I don't understand is the anger that some fans want to attach to that. And I think it only comes with not knowing your NBA history. There's no such thing as staying good forever. Very rarely is there such a thing for being competitive for a decade with championships and finals appearances. You know, people keep on saying, well, the Warriors are blowing Steph Curry's prime. My ass, they are. They won 3 championships during Steph Curry's prime, and then the win over Boston was probably the cherry on top. You're looking for 2 cherries on top now? That usually does not happen. And let me tell you, when great NBA teams reach the end of their greatness, there is no, and they just reloaded and came on back. You go back through the end of all eras, it comes to a screeching halt. I mean, you got teams who go from, yeah, they were really competitive to, hey, they're in the lottery 3-4 years in a row now. And the Warriors, you know, are going to be that type of team that just might be good enough to stick around that 38 to 44 win club, which is the kiss of death in the NBA. You're not good enough to have a real postseason anything, and you're not bad enough to have a really valuable lottery pick, and you just kind of get middled. I think the Warriors are probably about to get middled here for a few years in a row, unless something dramatic happens, unless, you know, oh my God, they swung a trade and Kevin Durant is back, which I don't think is going to happen. Or, oh my God, LeBron opted out and the Warriors spent a second rounder on Bronny and now LeBron is here. Say what you want about LeBron's age. The Warriors obviously don't need to add a player of LeBron's age, but a top 10 player in the NBA, that's also what LeBron was. It's amazing. He is the one guy who's almost beating Father Time in terms of production, but there's not a lot of paths out. There really aren't. So, you know, Steph Curry's got to hit 500 threes for them to really be it again. And I don't know if he can even do that. So they're in a little bit of trouble, Alex. There's no way to say otherwise. But one of the paths that they've already created for themselves to remain competitive is right there in front of them in Trayce Jackson-Davis. And I really do hope that we see him get a lion's share of front court minutes on a team that needs a better front court player. And I think that they got him right now on the roster. So huge offseason for Trayce. And what's the one thing Hoosiers fans know? Watching this guy, he doesn't waste off seasons. Trayce Jackson-Davis doesn't dick around in between years. He really works on his craft. He's a gym rat. And him being the gymmiest gym rat the Warriors have seen in a long time is what they need out of him. And I bet you he gives it.
Well, we'll be following it from afar, Damon. You'll be following it up close. Where can Indiana fans follow your work if they want to check out some of your stuff?
Thank you, Alex. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. There is no radio station I've ever been on that actually reached the state of Indiana. I heard YouTube has officially reached the state of Indiana. So anyone who's a Hoosier fan who wants to be kept up on all the latest, some exclusive interviews that Trayce has been nice enough to give me, please go ahead and follow and subscribe. Damon Bruce Plus. The podcast is Damon Bruce Plus that you can get anywhere you download your podcast normally. And Hoosier Love has done an awful lot to come give me a kiss on the forehead here since moving over to YouTube. So keep it up, Hoosiers. Come support your boy. Like and subscribe. And, if it's too much 49ers content, I understand. You can just ignore those videos. The Trayce ones will stand out. I promise you that. The Trayce videos will stand out. You'll know what to click on. And thank you, Alex, for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think you do a great job. Love the podcast and keep up the great work yourself, man. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, Damon. Really appreciate it. Terrific insight. Thanks as always to everybody for listening to Podcast on the Brink. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating over on Spotify, and we'll be back soon. Yes, 5 stars. Important.
5-star, like the recruits or like the one recruit who got driven away because of our toxic fan base. Well, screw you. Look at this transfer portal, baby. Mike Woodson, get it done. I saw would we see a early projection of Big Ten standings had Indiana ranked second behind UCLA. And I saw that. And I know that UCLA is about to join the Big Ten, but seeing them listed next to Indiana, it was UCLA, Indiana, Purdue, Oregon. And I almost spit my coffee out. I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. UCLA is in the Big Ten now. That's nuts.
Thanks nuts. Again, Damon. Thank you.
There
really
you go.
Appreciate
I keep on going on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's all good. Thanks everybody as always for listening to Podcast on the Brink. We'll be back next week with another episode. Take care and have a great rest of your week.